You know, this is the 70s and 80s. The CIA was just doing some really, like, wild stuff back then. Hey, what's up? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching from. Thank you so much for being here. My name's Scarlett, and today I'm going to be talking about how the CIA used psychics to study ancient life on Mars. I know how that sounds. It sounds like completely crazy. It sounds like the plot of a sci-fi movie, but it's something that's like actually out in the open. The CIA has admitted to this. You can actually Google the documents that like detail the sessions that they had with these psychics through the Freedom of Information Act. They're out on the internet. You just Google Mars remote viewing CIA, it should come up. It's really, really fascinating stuff, and I'm surprised that more people aren't talking about it. I mean, I've seen a few videos on it. I've seen like a couple things, but it just seems kind of like underplayed for the craziness of it all. I keep saying crazy, but it is crazy to me. So let's just get right into it. This goes back to the 1970s. The United States government had reason to believe that the Soviet Union was spending millions and millions on psychotronic research, basically psychic research, using telepathy and other unconventional techniques. Sorry for the angle change. I don't know if that's noticeable, but I had to change positions because my legs were tired, so now I'm actually sitting on the floor. Moving on. The US government was kind of like wondering why they were spending so much money on psychics. I guess, especially back then, you know, we were so paranoid about communism, and even now, I mean, supposedly Russia is like one of our greatest enemies, who knows, but the CIA was like, okay, let's get our own psychics, let's see what's really going on here. Is this something we need to be worried about? Is there something to this? We wanted to do the same thing and look into it because we're copycats. They eventually started consolidating various projects into something called Project Stargate, and what they were using was a technique called remote viewing. Remote viewing is basically using psychic ability to visualize a target that is very far away, and it can even be something that's separated from you by time, not just distance. One of the psychics that they were working with that I want to focus on today is a man by the name of Joseph McMoneagle. Joseph McMoneagle is a retired US soldier. He had a lot of strange things happen to him in his life. I mean, this guy like had it all, like everything you can think of possibly that's strange happened to him. I'm surprised he wasn't in an episode of the X-Files, seriously. He's like had out-of-body experiences, he's had near-death experiences, and he claims that he was abducted by aliens. Now, I know everybody has different opinions about aliens. I personally believe in them. I have seen a UFO before, and it definitely didn't look like something that a human made, so that's just my opinion, but I know we don't all believe in that. Apparently the CIA believed him because he believes that he was hand-chosen for this project, since all of these experiences seem to have strengthened his psychic abilities. This is something else the CIA has admitted that's pretty interesting. They believe all humans have psychic ability, but we just don't know how to access it. He seems to have a higher frequency than the rest of us. He seems to, even compared to the other psychics that they were working with, he had one of the highest accuracy ratings according to himself, but I mean, a lot of information is coming from him. He does have some evidence to back himself up, and I honestly believe him. I don't get the sense that he's a liar just from hearing him talk. The CIA not only used him for remote viewing, they also trained him how to control his out-of-body experiences, how to astral project, basically. They preferred him to use that for certain things. They didn't always want him to do remote viewing because apparently it's better for certain things and remote viewing is better for other things.
I had been training with Bob for almost 14 months, learning to control my out-of-body experiences. I had had spontaneous out-of-bodies for many years, and Bob had been training with me in his lab at the last year of my time at the project, Stargate project, to teach me to control my out-of-bodies. I wanted to see if controlled out-of-bodies were better at producing information, collection information, than remote viewing. It turns out you can do very specific things with out-of-bodies that you can't do with remote viewing, but I don't think it's as good. If you want to know how the trigger mechanism works on a Chinese nuclear weapon, out of body's better, because you can go to the Chinese nuclear weapon and put your face in it, look around, do detailed drawing. But if you want to know where all the parts from the weapon came from, remote viewing's better, because all the parts are intricately linked together, data-wise.
From what I've read and what I've seen in his seminars, it sounded like they were mostly using him for military kind of operations, to like spy on our enemies' weapons and bases and things like that, and just see what was going on. They eventually decided to get a little bit more experimental and just branch out a little bit more. This is where it gets really interesting. They asked him to look at Mars. When they would give the targets to the sidekicks, they would give them very minimal information. And I believe this was because they wanted to kind of gauge how accurate they were. So sometimes they would have more information, the CIA would have more like background information. They would only give them very few details and see how much they actually could see. A lot of this stuff reminds me of like MK Ultra, like Stranger Things. Like when you start listening to them describe the facility, he says he was laying on a bed of salt in a dark room.
9.55 degrees west. I didn't know anything about the targets as I was laying in a dark black cube in the lab, floating on a sea of salt, listening to Hemisync tapes. And the first thing I heard was the coordinates.
I mean, I don't think it was anything like abusive or anything like that, but it's just like, you know, this is the 70s and 80s, and it's like that whole crazy time. Like the CIA was just doing some really like wild stuff back then. They gave his supervisor, his person that was conducting this experiment, a sealed envelope.
One of the training tests that he brought was a target that I didn't know anything about. Normally I did mundane targets, like quasi-military targets. Well, this particular week he brought a Mars target. I didn't know it was a Mars target, but he gave a sealed envelope, neither did Bob Monroe. He gave a sealed envelope to Bob Monroe, which inside had a card that said Mars 1 million years BC. Bob thought it was another Moonday target as well. And he had a list of coordinates. So Bob had this card in his shirt pocket, and we had a list of coordinates as targets. And the first set of coordinates was 44.89 degrees.
When he begins to describe what he saw, it's just mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. And he didn't know that he was looking at another planet. All he had were coordinates and like a time period, like a time frame. He didn't know he was looking at Mars. That's the point I'm trying to make. He starts describing pyramids.
And this was my response. I got a great view of a pyramid form, sitting in a large depression. It's yellowish, ochre colored. I get clouds, a severe storm, major geological trauma.
He thought he was looking at Earth. He just thought like, oh, this is a new pyramid that they discovered. They discovered some new site where there might have been a pyramid. Didn't know he was looking at Earth. Even when he starts to see people, he still thinks he's looking at Earth.
Then I was asked to visit the site before the trauma. They said, go back before the trauma. They said all the dirt had disappeared. There were now smooth walls. Everything was flat, megalithic. I said something about, gee, is this a new pyramid? Did they discover a new pyramid? Because it's really large. Shadow of people, fragments, memory of people. They said, go back to when they were there. Large people, thin and tall, wearing strange clothes, skin tight, very tight, almost can't see them.
He just thinks, you know, he does describe they look different, but he's not like, oh, these aren't humans, they're people, like they're just people. He doesn't say like they're aliens or they look weird. He just is like, oh yeah, they're very tall and thin and they're wearing skin tight clothes. So this brings us to his whole theory that humans are those people. This planet was destroyed, compromised somehow. Not necessarily destroyed, obviously it's still there. Some of the population left to find a new home for them, and he thinks that we're the descendants of the ones who left.
This is a general area. Pyramid's huge, but different this time. The reason these were different is because they were a cluster. These are like shelters from storms. Designed for sleeping, I specified hibernation, sleeping through savage storms. I'm asked to find out why. They're an ancient people trying to survive. It's past their time and age. They're waiting for the return of someone sent to find a new home. Their world passed through the tail of a comet. I had a sense that their atmosphere was stripped away or destabilized when it passed through the tail of the comet. That's a grouping of pyramids. And that's a building, or what's left of a building on a sort of a plateau. And that's a drawing I did of the larger beings. What I think in actuality, there really are no such thing as Martians. What I think Martians are is us. I think we're descendants of the original inhabitants of Mars. And we're the ones that never went back.
The reason why I kind of believe this is because if you look at the anomalies, like the pyramids here on Earth that we've been studying for like thousands of years, we still don't know how these were built. And I know that's just because we don't know, like the absence of information doesn't automatically make any theory true, but I believe this guy, I believe in his abilities. If he thinks that's what it is, I kind of believe him. My feeling, my whole kind of instinct is pushing me towards that. Like I just feel like that's probably accurate. I don't know, like I just feel like more and more as time goes on, things keep coming to light. In my lifetime alone, Pluto has been named a planet, not a planet. I think there's like another name for it now. Like it's just, like, who decides these things? Even the scientists, like mainstream scientists have suggested that we don't come from Earth. Like I've heard theories, there's the panspermia theory that basically, layman's terms, I'm not a scientist, guys. From my basic brain understanding, it's when like there's bacteria on like another meteor or planet or some kind of rock in space that collides with another planet or hits something close to another planet, and then like the bacteria falls to Earth and like seeds. We just kind of grew, and that's how we got here. Who knows? I mean, I think to me, the thing that stands out to me is the more that I've been alive, the more that I learn things and I'm like absorbing information. We don't know shit. That's like what I'm getting out of everything. We don't know everything. We don't know anything, really. But it's fun to speculate. I love like having these discussions, even with myself. I have discussions in my head all day about this shit. My mind's like constantly going. That's why I decided to make this channel. Like, why not have a conversation with all of you? So that brings me to my next point. Secure Team 10, one of my favorite channels. If you're into this kind of content, you probably definitely watched him or have at least seen one of his videos. He recently put up a video about a fossilized human shoe print that was proven to be a shoe print, and it's millions of years old. Like, I thought humans were only a couple 100,000 years old. According to modern science that's accepted everywhere as the gold standard today, humans are not millions of years old. We've only been on the planet for a few 100,000 years. That just kind of like causes like a lot of controversy. Obviously, he mentioned a few other artifacts in this video. I'll link it below because it just is really crazy and fascinating. If you haven't watched any of his videos yet, you definitely should check him out because you're looking at this stuff, I'm sure you'll love his channel. It's amazing. I used to think that show Ancient Aliens on History Channel, I remember like I used to watch it because I thought it, like I liked it, but I used to think it was crazy. I'm like, wow, these people like really come up with like the stretches of the century trying to connect aliens to everything. But now I'm like, honestly, like not really that much different than what modern scientists do. I mean, there's some things obviously we know like are proven, but like there just seems to be so much stuff that like changes constantly. So who knows? Project Stargate was supposedly terminated in 1995, and they say this is because there were too many erroneous readings and it wasn't worth the time and effort anymore. However, Joseph McMoneagle has stated that he believes that they discontinued it because of the stigma of psychics, which I can totally see where he's coming from with that. They have a really bad reputation, psychics. I mean, even today, like, so many people don't believe in them. I can just see like a new supervisor or someone coming in to take over the project and be like, this is a load of malarkey. No, we're not doing this anymore. And just like coming in and cut. I can really see that happening. I mean, I met people like this in real life, especially if you're someone like me who really believes in all this kind of crazy paranormal and phenomenon. And I mean, I believe in a lot of things, so there's gonna be all that on my channel. If you are into like the X-Files, if you like aliens, government conspiracy theories, ghosts, all that, I got you covered. I have so many things to talk about here on this channel. So that being said, you should definitely go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you do like this kind of content. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give me a big thumbs up. I really would appreciate that. And let me know what you think in the comments. Do you believe Joseph McMoneagle? Do you think he's the real deal? Do you think that the CIA really stopped using Project Stargate? And thank you so much for watching. It's my first video on this channel, so I really hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'm always looking for people in this community to engage with on these topics. I just think that we can learn and experience so much more as a community than you ever could as one person. So really would love to hear what you guys have to say, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks guys, bye!